Alright, so welcome back everyone. In this section, we are going to focus on changing the MAC address of our interface that we are using. So in this case, our interface would be our Wi-Fi card or this network adapter. So you can see that we have a bridge network adapter. So why do we need to change our MAC addresses? So in this course, we will develop some programs, for example, ARP spoof, which will help us to become a man in the middle. So to perform these attacks, you expose your MAC address to the victim machine. So you don't want to do that. So what you will do is that you will try to change your MAC address for the moment, and once your attack is completed, you can go back to your normal MAC address. So masking your MAC address will provide you safety or security. It will help you in hiding your identity. So before we go into creating a program for changing our MAC address, we will interact with ifconfig command in our Kali machine. This command helps you to configure IP addresses or net related activities in your Kali machine. So the first command we are going to use is called ifconfig. So before we go into details of ifconfig, first let's see what the private and public IP address is. So a private IP address is the one that is used inside your own local network, and this IP address is not accessible outside your local network. So this address is something like this, for example 192.168.0. And then there would be some number. So these last two things could change. For example, it could be 15 or something, but this will mostly remain the same in case of our local networks. This could also change. It could be 172, for example, but most of the time it will be something like this, 192.168.0.15. So if you don't see anything like this, what you can do is go to this network adapter settings. You can go from here, and once you have this network adapter settings, click on this bridged condition and tick or check this box, and this will change your IP address to this format. So now your IP address will resemble like mine. So the next thing is a public IP address. So this is an IP address that is provided to you by your internet service provider or ISP, and this is usually static and you cannot mostly change it unless you are using VPNs. A public IP is used whenever you are interacting with something that is outside your own network. And if you are interacting with something or some device that is inside your own local network, then you use the MAC address. MAC stands for Media Access Control, and it is used for all the local communication that is happening inside your own network. So, and similarly, IP addresses are used for communication outside your own network. So there are ways to hide your identity. For example, you can hide your IP address by using VPNs. VPNs are virtual private networks, or programs or softwares that help you mask your identity. You can buy them, and even you can use some free versions, but most of the time you have to buy this software. And then in order to change a MAC address, so since MAC address works inside your own local network, so you don't need to pay anything for changing your MAC address, and you can do it locally on your own machine. And it helps you to hide your local activity. So if you are performing some attack in your local network, it helps you to mask your identity because you can hide your real MAC address. So in this section we will build this MAC address. So before we go into building it, let's first check out the ifconfig command. So ifconfig is used for finding out your IP addresses or IP addresses for your local interfaces. So I am currently on Kali 2020 version. So this Kali user is not a root user. So previously in earlier versions of Kali, you could simply write ifconfig and this would work. But in Kali 2020, this does not work. So you have to use sudo before it in order for this command to run properly. So you can simply write sudo ifconfig and press enter, and then it will ask you for password. Just provide the password, which is Kali, and now you can see that it prints out the IP addresses for different interfaces. So don't worry about this interface, just focus on this ETH0. If you are using Windows, it would be different, it would be something like WOLP, etc. But since we are working with Linux, it is ETH0, and I think the same command works in Mac OS as well. So instead of ETH0, it would be EN0, I think. Okay, so now you can see that we have, this is our private or local IP address. So it is 192.168.0.23, and then this is your IPv6. So we will not focus on IPv6 in this course, so we will only focus on these two parameters. So one would be this IPv4 address, and the other one would be this one, which is the MAC address for this interface. This interface is nothing but a physical hardware device that provides you network connectivity. In next lecture, we will build a program using ifconfig, and then we will try to change this field, which is the ether field. So I'm going to stop here.